today, and I think this is a really great thing to do, is to have these series of talks. And I want to mention another series, the transformative design seminars. You know, some of you know that we're engaged in a search for a new design faculty, and I'm heading up that committee for that search. And so we have 5 people visiting. The first talk is tomorrow. I put a link in the chat, and they will be, you can view them on Zoom as well. So please join us for that if you're interested, starting tomorrow at 11.
Awesome, wonderful. Okay, should we jump in? So we're always concerned about time. We know this is going to go really fast. My instinct is to just try to go through the presentations rapid fire. If you have questions, that question and answer session is always really important to us. So maybe make note of them. And then at the end of all of the presentations, I'm thinking, if this works well for us, we're going to go through all of those different questions and have a conversation with all of the team researchers. So thanks for being here, everybody. And Yasushi, I'll pass to you.
Okay, so I think I can start, right? I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah, you sound good and we're ready to go.
You see the keynote.
It's just loading.
Do you see a black screen?
I see a black screen, yes.
Okay, so hi, my name is Yasushi Sakai. I'm a PhD student at the MIT City Science Group. And I'm going to very briefly talk about what I'm currently working on, which we call the propagation of proxy voting, which I'm working with Parfait in the group. So let's start with community benefits. This is kind of a real project with around 240 acres. And this is the great list of community benefits that the developers, the city required to the developers. You have, for example, 20% of inclusionary housing units. You have, close to the bottom, 61,000 square feet of community space, new parks, 15 acres. That's all good. We have impact fees. So the city is asking for a lot of money, actually, for water and storm drainage. And new streets, sidewalks, this is all good. We have improvements. But what does this actually mean? Like 61,000 square of community space, what does that actually mean? Is it like a library, or is it like a market, or new streets and sidewalk? What's the design? And impact fees, what are the allocations? How was this determined? We don't really know. Even it's a list and it looks great, we don't really know what it is. And then the developer and the architect team up and come up with this beautiful rendering, and you open your community engagement meeting and you somehow get this lots of helpful feedback, like you're losing sunlight, traffic, and everything irrational. People would say, yeah, this is going to decrease the quality of life, right? This is what usually happens. And this all started from one development. So they're somehow linked, but we see them very disjointly. So, but if you think about it, these are all linked. Like the rendering will include the units of inclusionary housing. Sunlight would somehow connect with the FAR. So these are like what kind of community supporting system can we make that encapsulates all this complexity? So I don't think this is not different. They're just layers or different domains. In our research, we try to define what we mean by complexity in urban planning. So one is knowledge fragmentation. The second one is multi-layered policies. Policies are layered in their nature, and entrenched org structures. So like you usually have the developer, the mayor, the council, but that's very fixed. You don't have very flexibility on it. And with this, you can kind of illustrate a lot of complexities like trade secrets, or local knowledge versus analytical knowledge that we usually do in our group. Right? So what should we do? What kind of tool can we make in order to combat these complex situations? And what we came up in the model is that, okay, what if the system lets you to divide your votes? For example, if you have a very strong opinion on a direct policy, for example, that we want streetlights, you can give a part of your vote to that to push that policy. If you have no idea whatsoever and you just really don't care about it, you just delegate to someone else. Or you have a very good feeling about the local bike commuting advocacy group. So you just give 25% to that group. And maybe someone will say, yes, this is all great, flexible, but this is too complicated. But the system lets you to do the status quo, which is just lending all your vote to one person called the mayor. So if you're not interested, or if you don't have enough time to digest the kind of information, you can always resort to the current system. Under the hoods, it kind of creates this kind of bucket of trust, and it passes through. And we have a mechanical function that actually gathers all the trust into the direct policies, so to see which one was most favorable. So for example, if we want to reallocate the impact fees, this is a very early version of the app, but this is one view from a view from one user. If people are comfortable about allocating all these buckets, that's fine. But if people have no idea, they can always rely on maybe the planning authority or the bike commute advocacy group. But maybe you can just delegate some of your votes to, or your trust to, the neighborhood association or someone very close by, like my wife. It gives you the most favorable policy, which in this case, mobility improvements got the most trust. But at the same time, we can start to analyze which node or which person actually aggregated trust to change the results. In this case, I collected almost double the votes compared to an average participant. So this is it. There's no time for mathematical model explanation, but we thought we could use a off-the-shelf model called liquid democracy, but we actually ended up generalizing it, and we are working on publishing this paper. Thank you.
Awesome, Yasushi, thank you. So fast and concise, and the paper isn't published yet, so you can't share it with folks, is that right?
Yes, but I think we can talk about it.
Great. Yeah, let's talk about it today a bit during the Q&A, and then, like, you know, for any of this research, we can follow up with you all too as things come out. Okay, thanks, Yasushi. Let's pass to the next presenter. So Georine, you'll go next. I see your screen, looks good. Awesome.
You see the full screen here?
You know, I'm seeing presenter view, like the two slides.
Hold on 1 second. Sorry. Sorry, I think I'll try one more time here.
I'll let you know what I see.
Okay. Still presenter view?
Still presenter view.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, I see a note from Yasushi too. So if folks want to, I feel like you're going to get so much information, all of this folks who are viewing. So if you have questions, you can start even putting those in the chat. We can come to them later for the discussion, or Yasushi is online, so he can be responding to you there too.
Oh no. Could I just get this sorted? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, take your time. Maybe Georine, while you're setting up, is there a question for Yasushi right away, or folks' initial thoughts? It's definitely like kind of a lot to see. I feel like from Yasushi, I've learned a lot about different kinds of democracy and voting systems. So even I'm still sort of getting acclimated to the way that works. I saw some comments even sending out these emails to folks, Yasushi, that people throughout the City Science Network are so interested in consensus and consensus building. Is there a way that you feel like this could, I mean, I know that you're still developing systems and how it could work. Is there a way you think it could apply to folks who are throughout the City Science Network, maybe using city scopes, for example, to do sort of decision making? Or
Yeah, so I think it still aligns. I don't want to take Jorine's time, but I think any kind of collective decision making topic would fit in. It's just that you do need to kind of build up the scenario. But yes, the Cityscope platform will work, definitely. Yeah, so if there's any kind of hard issues that maybe internally the team can think about, I think that actually will help me too. So in the research, I'm all
awesome. Yeah, we have lots of folks in this vein, so I'm sure there's many people on the call with input for it as well. And Georine, your screen looks perfect. So I think we're ready for you when you are.
Hi, sorry about all the issues. So hi, my name is Georine Pierre. I'm a second year master's student at City Science Group, and I'll be researching, sharing with you my current thesis. So I'm currently looking at issues on opportunities of urban mining in informal settlements. And through this research, I'm contributing to City Science's Power Without that looks at a roadmap to understanding and working with informal settlements globally, and ultimately looking at strategies towards aiding beyond traditional infrastructure. So I'm currently working with informal in my urban mining communities of a population of over 30,000 people in a village area in Accra, Ghana, named Agbobashi. And it's currently home to the largest global destination for e-waste. And in terms of understanding urban mining, it's important to understand it's a process of extracting waste byproducts generated by cities using anthropogenic stocks rather than geological to meet the demands of society. And in this context, in my work, it's important to understand that it's now more efficient to mine materials from our waste, in which there's 10 times more gold, silver, and platinum in 1 ton of our electronics than in 1 ton of ore from beneath the surface of the earth. This is an incredible reality, but an opportunity for these communities. So this map begins to unveil the international streams of e-waste from industrialized countries that are mislabeled and offshored to sites like the one in Accra, in which 500 to 800 shipping containers worth of e-waste get sent to the Tema harbor in Accra each month, and about 80% of electronics are mislabeled and are no longer functioning. And it's important to understand as well that informal settlements are formed around the dependency of e-waste recovery, in which 15,000 people and local and migrant workers contribute to the micro-industries. So the work is looking at how can we establish nurturing and circular relationships for informal settlements and allow regenerative ecosystems to envision urban mining processes from the city environment. And as an integrated case study, field research, and pilot project, I'm looking at opportunities for not only understanding informality through urban mining, but opportunities for intervention, and then also looking at reimagining transformative, sustainable futures. In this context as well, it's important to understand that this is not only happening in Accra, but other global cities, specifically within trends of communities within informal settlements. So as an integrated e-waste market, it allows for many individuals to have a key role, both on site and in the city of Accra. This is just a glimpse of the diverse streams of flows and activities within the market as well. And there's this level of organization and an intervention in which it contributes to the secondhand market. And 97% of those are contributing to the informal economy. There's a lot of interventions that are happening in terms of cultural practice, which I document in my work. And they're doing everything from repurposing materials into building materials using cultural strategies, turning 3D printers, e-waste into the first 3D printers, drones, and other on-site technologies. And I worked with a grassroots organization to document this work, as well as looking at capacity building workshops. And then in terms of more currently in the work that I'm doing, I'm looking at a series of strategies of analyzing through satellite mappings. And in this case, previously in my work, I looked at locating and identifying the sort of publicly accessible field data to communities. And then more currently, I'm working on filming and documenting the narratives of local people. This was past month in January in Agbobashi, where I directed a documentary, and now I'm looking at opportunities for integrating immersive narrative storytelling with data visualization that contributes to the complexities of these sites. This is just more looking at the investigation framework, in which we also sent a series of questions where we interviewed local people, and then worked with NUS, which is a science and technology university based near Accra, that is also working with these communities, in which they interviewed 225 informal workers. And I'm also looking at integrating data from the World Bank. And I'm wrapping it up in terms of thinking about the pilot project. I'm currently collaborating with Tuwende in Tanzania, which is dealing with a similar context of e-waste, but with a refugee settlement camp. And we're looking at opportunities for repurposing electronics for capacity building, and with that in mind. And then also thinking about public resource tools that can be used as educational models through the repurpose. And these are just some of the project partners, including Samsung. And I'll end it at that. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Georine. Some of the folks that I know well, I'm still learning more when you present, so it's really cool to see the new work coming as well. Leticia, let's have you get set up with your screen share. Thoughts and comments for Georine? Maybe folks can start to put them in the chat. If anything's coming up, anything's coming to mind. It's hard to have you all present so fast.
Maggie, I think Andres has a question in the chat.
Yes, I see from Andres, I think, Yasushi, this is going back to you. And Andres, if you're here and you want to open your mic, you can. Otherwise, I can ask for you.
Yeah, sure. So it was for Yasushi, just thinking about the types of decisions that are best suited for this type of system. And if you're going to do a real world deployment that we can vote for a development that you're thinking of or something, I think it would be very nice to see something like that.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I was intending to use it in a complex system situation, like I told. And one of the application, of course, is urban planning and development. And yes, I would, looking for real world examples and applications within my thesis. I know it's hard, but let's just see.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, keep thinking on those things. And in the meantime, we will pass to Letty.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. Can you hear me and see my screen?
Yeah, looks good. Looks good, sounds good.
Okay, perfect. So today I'm going to talk briefly about how I've been collecting data for human-centric environments. And let's see. Okay. So I say that if we had employed the available data to design Boston or any other city, it would be nothing like the actual city. So this is what it could be, or maybe this, that are spaces designed primarily focused on optimization, because it's the platform they operate in physical platforms, and they also work with data that is usually easy to capture or easy to measure, such as traffic flows, stocks, traffic like flows of energy. So in these processes, some details that are important and represent our communities, I feel they are often overlooked. For example, in Guadalajara, Mexico, some women, they they don't go out of the street after 5 p.m. for safety reasons. And there is a lot of information related to behavior and experiences without us that are difficult to channel through the current urban planning processes and tools. Sorry for the sound. Can you hear the sound?
We don't hear the video sound.
You don't hear the video sound? Okay. So in this context, being kind of like advocating for the collection of locally sourced data and its integration into the collective decision-making process. And this is what locally sourced data looks like. That was, sorry, the presentation is going a little bit crazy.
There's a lag, maybe.
Yeah, it's going back and forth. Anyways, so I was saying that this is an example of what locally sourced data means to me. And in order to convert the information that we know about this community in particular, we needed a sensor that you see on the right for these women in Guadalajara to track their own route on the left, and with the different points that you see in red, where as they navigate the streets, they might experience this sense of vulnerability. And this is another example, an application that goes beyond conventional mapping, and it collects data while assisting you in navigating the urban landscape. So the idea is that we have local people with their observations, and so we get the local problems. And once I had this localized data set, then we can simulate the different changing conditions and predict different future states in this local environment. However, when I finished this, I was thinking that as someone who is not familiarized with this type of tools, it is difficult sometimes to understand or to grasp conclusions from agent-based models. And also, as generative data sets are becoming a thing, the most simulated and less localized they are, the less relevant it's going to be in a real world context. So with these two premises in mind, like to have localized data sets and to make the process available to everyone to contribute, we are adding this data visualization layer as a first-person view of the changes in the decision-making process tool in the ImmerScope. And this tool, as you can see here, operates in an immersive setting and allows users, different community members, to imagine different scenarios and change parts of the external world by vocalizing their thoughts. So in a way that we will naturally do it if we had some ideas on how to design something, and we had to tell them to a person that could translate these ideas into concepts. So we had this tool operating in the lab for a few events, and we have asked people that pass by, what do you want your city to be like, or how will you make your city better? And we got results like these ones. These images that are generated are guided by a 3D model, in this case of Kendall Square in Boston, and the audio description of what space they would like to experience. And this tool is supported as well by a tangible and physical interface, which allows us to have a shared reference space, so we can collectively understand where are we making the changes in the platform. And this is a little bit more in detail. I think Vincy is going to talk about this because we're working together on this project with Ariel as well. So I'm not going to extend on this, but you can see here that the changes made in the tangible user interface are reflected on the immersive space interface. And that's all. Thank you. And Sorry about the
Thank you so much, Leti.
issues with the presentation.
It was great from our end. It looked great. I think maybe we missed some audio, but it's super beautiful, super compelling. Okay, team, next up is going to be Vincy. And as Vincy, I'll have you get set up. Any thoughts anyone has initially for Georine or for Leti? I know there were some more questions coming in for Yasushi that we'll take during the Q&A as well. We're getting too much information all at once, maybe. Just checking, Vince. Is Vincy here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. I wonder from the network how many of these folks you've been aware of their research and how much is new. You know, we saw in Leti's presentation the link to the Guadalajara lab. So some of the links have sort of already been made and explored, but I think there's a lot of others that we're still kind of considering. Everything looks good, Vincy. Ready when you are.
Okay. Hi, I'm Vincy. Then share my camera. Okay. Okay, I'm Vincy. I currently run research focus on citizens, a continuation of the ImmerScope and Cityscope project. Before delving into my recent work, I have to briefly talk about ImmerScope, which Leti just mentioned about that. As we all know, Cityscope is a data-driven and evidence-based platform that enhances our understanding and communication with various stakeholders. However, those data can be too abstract for different stakeholders and often lack experiential perspectives. This led to our first attempt at adding an experiential layer to the ImmerScope. And here's the video of that. ImmerScope transformed a static image taken from Cityscope table and a text prompt. Probably the voice is too loud. And then transform it speculative cityscape. At the moment, the existing generative model, I require 1 to 2 minutes to generate such an image. And then now let's move on to citizens. Ideal system architecture of the whole citizens and synthesize tangible user inputs, which could be RobotScope or Cityscope table, and with urban characteristic. Additionally, it incorporates agent-based model rendering, supported by the quantified performance data. And here's my first attempt to that. It's a continuation of the ImmerScope. And then I have developed a sensing platform with stackable queues that can represent 2 types of land use by changing their orientation, and also web UI that can synchronize the physical model and generate a cityscape almost in real time. It takes like 2 to 3 seconds, and using stable diffusion extra large turbo. And this is most of the progress now. And future steps could be adding dynamics KPI, physical platform configuration, and generating contextualized cityscape that represent the KPI we have identified. And this tool adds an experiential layer to the city science process, enabling different stakeholders to communicate and convey complex urban idea effectively. And that's it. ImmerScope and citizens are in their initial phases, and we are currently brainstorming our next steps. So we're eager to receive feedback and look forward to cooperate in the future. Thank you.
Awesome, Vincy. Thank you. It's looking beautiful. Again, I'm seeing like new things happening that I'm not always aware of, I'm not on top of. So awesome. Thank you for sharing. One more presentation for us today, and then we officially start talking about all of this sort of diverse work and research. So the last person today who will present will be Ryan. Ryan Zhang is online. Ready when you are, Ryan.
Hey, yeah, let me share my screen.
Looks good.
Let me know. Yeah, okay. So, hey everyone. I'm Ryan, PhD candidate at the Citizens Group in MIT. Recently, I've been working on this prosocial urban development, which oh, sorry, it's a bit slow. Okay, to cue Kent's recent talk in the, sorry, it seems it's stuck in the middle. One sec.
Yeah, it's a little slow for me too when I'm
Yeah.
seeing.
I think Zoom is getting my computer.
I was having a little trouble with my Zoom, so let's see.
Yeah. One sec. I mean, share screen. Can you guys see my screen?
No.
All right. I think I will give up full screen because it was stuck. Yeah. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay.
I want to try like this. Go
So
ahead.
I will just present it this way so that it doesn't froze. Yeah, so in the written talk in the City Science Summit 2023, and talk about how to make incentive policies and algorithmic dynamic land use regulations to change behaviors of multiple stakeholders, including developer, government, and citizens to achieve civic homeostasis. So the issue we have now in the current urban development process include the ownership is only for the property owners, lack of the ownership for the people who live and work there. There's also lack of trust in terms of how the decision is made, and also lack of the developing the program that is a prosocial and prosustainable that the citizens live there needs. So, and so in the light of solving these challenges, we're looking at a new process for more prosocial urban development, which using a bunch of techniques to improve ownership, trust, and prosocial and sustainable values. So we know that it's been cities has been experimenting since like zoning. For example, in New York, if you build plazas, public space, they can build up to 20% more the space, so to incentivize the developer. But the issue is it's very static, like it can last for decades, but without changing, it's meeting the demand of a new demand of people. So what if we can find a way to get the demand of the citizens and then use algorithmic dynamic regulations to achieve, let the developer to do that. So the idea is it's similar to the regulation in New York, but the only difference is it could gather the demand every, let's say, quarter from through a app, and also the demand is collected in a way that is geo-relevant. For example, if you are nearby program, a site that is being developed, you will have more governance power to weight your demand. So, but to make sure this works as a planned, with teamed up with a visiting PhD here, Kai, we're developing agent-based simulation, which have multiple type of agent and interaction among them. So including the agent, the community member, project, developer, and government agents, and each of them has different properties, like the population, the distribution, democratic distribution, what kind of demand for each persona. For example, that's for we of course for research purpose simplify it so that it is different weight that different type of people could need. And currently it's more or less stakeholder, but we'll added more scientific backup to the data. And then this project will collect this demand and also will know who is relevant. And the developer will pick the project that is most profitable and suitable for their characteristics to develop as well. So basically, you can imagine an urban area with a building to be built, with the residents, or within a framework that is calculating the demand and incentives. So yeah, so we want to see we are building the simulation, and when it is done, we want to see the performance, how the city is doing through time, similar to the equity without zoning project was did like this, so that we know the incentive policy is working or not. So yeah, that's basically it. Thank you very much.
Awesome, Ryan. Thank you so much. Okay, good job to everyone. That's a lot to get through in a really short amount of time. So congrats to all of you on your presentations. Let's start question and answer. So if you have a question to ask, if you raise your virtual hand, I think it's the best way to do it. I know we saw a ton of different content today, from that sort of consensus collages into e-waste and informality. The ImmerScope was presented, and also sort of ideas for more human-centric spaces. And then finally, Ryan, this sort of pro-social urban development. All of the researchers are at different moments of their projects. Some folks are, further into their PhD. Some people are sort of doing their masters, but also further into their masters. So we're seeing different types of work here. Okay, where should we go first? So I think Georine, I see a question from you. If you're able to open your mic, it'd be great if you can ask it. I'll give you a minute. And if not, I can ask it for you if you're not available. I understand. And maybe she isn't able. So Zuri, let me ask, or Yasushi, let me ask you this question from Zuri.
Maybe I can read.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you, Zuri. So the question is, it could be applied to different fields, like other than urban planning, like open budget processes, and public budget. I think what we're talking, so Cambridge, the place where we live here, I think already 10 years now, we have this process called the participatory budgeting system, which is close to under 1% of the city budget. The citizens get to, the residents, so me as a foreigner included, over 12, you can actually vote for allocating that part of money. Yes, and this could be really applied to that kind of system. if you go into the Cambridge participatory system, you actually have a middle layer that aggregates all the proposals from the citizens and kind of sorts through which is actually doable. And that's actually a lot of power, and people call it the budget delegates. One example would be through testing. Maybe we can have like a substitute system to actually prioritize which proposals are kind of favorable, like using as a filtering process. So yes, very much you can use it for budget allocation. There is in the past, there was comments that maybe we can use for, well, this is close, but like investment, like which stock should we buy and stuff. So quite frankly, any kind of, but I think I'm interested in also using this to like try to design some kind of citizen charter, more abstract. So those are on the lines. And thank you for the question.
Awesome. Thanks, Yasushi. Marcus, do you want to go next? I see you have a question for Ryan.
Yeah, I had put in two questions, one for Yasushi, one for Ryan. The question for Ryan was asking, what are the variables in the simulations? Like, how do you like control or understand how community benefit is really being applied, or what community benefit actually is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have many variables, like including like how many like how do we sample the population, because to be realistic you have a subset of it, and how do you get the data that, for example, how do you classify different profile of people? These are all kind of simulation variables for the simulation itself. So basically, I don't think when you change the simulation, it will change the output of the result of the policy. It's basically you want to make the simulation realistic as possible. The other type of the variables is more important, in my opinion, which is the variables for incentive policies. For example, how much percentage of the budget of the city, or say how much percentage of the floor areas that you can increase, right? Which will result in profit for the developer. And also variables like how large a range what's the decay function to get the involvedness of the people. These are like variables for the incentive policy itself, which is the main focus, and will give us different, I believe will give us different output of the development after the simulation is done. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, we have to, I'd love to hear more about like how you quantify a positive versus negative. Like, how do you represent good impact?
Oh, so I can add a third variable, which is more like the outcome itself. So we have years or decades of experience in Cityscope in terms of urban performance, prosocial, sustainable ones, including the reasons like climate model we are building. So I can foresee to have a relatively simplified version to use to evaluate the output as well. So it's not only evaluating people's, for example, how their demand is needed, how their demand is met, or how much financial benefit they have. We will also examine the urban performances that we usually do.
Okay.
Thank you, Ryan. Other thoughts or other questions Andres, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
So I had a thought slash question for Georine. So I think that our research is extremely related in a lot of ways, due to sensors and part of the research is, oh, let's get sensors everywhere. So this really makes me think about internally of my research. So I was wondering if from your experience with the people collecting and disassembling these components and then repurposing them, if you had any ideas or perspectives on how to improve the designs or the materials that we use for this type of systems. If we usually tend to design for scale manufacturing, but not scale remanufacturing or repurposing. So I think that that's something that could be very interesting to integrate in this type of system. So being able to use them for more things or repurpose them for for other uses, etc. I don't know if you have some internal thoughts or perspectives on that.
Thank you so much for your question. And I think definitely there's a lot of like overlap and excited to like have more conversations with you about it. I think even more recently in terms of the sort of pilot project that I'm working on in Tanzania, I think the thoughts that I've had more recently in terms of the pilot project is looking at the sort of education. So like thinking about repurposing electronics with education in mind. So currently I'm looking into education incentives that directly relate to the informal economy. So trends within the informal economy and how people are working there specifically. So one example of this is through the repurposing of the electronics. So through the Samsung project, we're repurposing electronics using Arduino and other sensors. But the idea is like creating an off-grid network system that connects scrap dealers with waste recyclers. So for example, in the city, not only are they getting electronic waste within the landfill, but they're also depending on mobility and actually going around the city in search of e-waste, especially because the economy and the community is being threatened in terms of displacement and other things. So thinking about the consistency of entrepreneurship is something they have in mind. So with that in mind, that can create a more efficient economy if they are actually able to communicate with and connect with other people that are looking to repurpose electronic waste throughout the city. So thinking about like more efficient streams and flows as well. And then also thinking about that not everyone will have access to an efficient network. So with that in mind, we're thinking about an incentive where people are getting the educational training on how to repurpose the electronic waste safely without burning. And then they would have access to this repurposed electronic that connects them to other scrap dealers around the city. So that's just one of like many other opportunities that I think could be very doable and efficient. Yeah.
Thanks so much. Yeah, let's for sure talk more. Thanks, Georine.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Georine. Kent, I saw you opened your mic. Did you have a thought or a question, or we want to take one more?
Well, I was going to maybe follow up with Georine. So these e-waste sites have, just as you pointed out, incredibly valuable metals and other material that could be mined, and there are also components that can be extracted to create new products like computers and appliances. And I guess my question would be, what would be necessary in terms of policy or technology or design that would allow these e-waste sites, which are pretty grim, dangerous places, to become viable new centers of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kent. Thank you. And I think one part of the work that I'm doing is not only looking at Accra and the sort of innovation that's happening, but looking at other case studies where the transition from informal to formal economy has been successful. And oftentimes there have been, especially in Southeast Asia, as well, there's been a few policies in place that have been done to protect informal worker rights as well. And then also creating facilities that are specific for repurposing of e-waste, but also again, like mobility has been playing a really large role in that as well. So they've created networks and transit systems that are specific for e-waste recycling when it has been like a very large issue in the context of these cities. So that's just another thing that in mind, but definitely the first thing would be about in terms of, especially with the risk of displacement, protecting communities as well, and making sure they have the right and access to the lands and materials that they're working with. But definitely something that I'm looking at, looking more into with the case studies as well, where in terms of those models.
And it's clear what happened in the last year with the one e-waste site that you studied was exactly, it seems to me, exactly the wrong thing for the government to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So currently the government is threatening these communities, and then also not knowing what to do with the e-waste. They've transported some of the e-waste into nearby landfills without to discourage activity, but also they haven't had active policies in place in terms of the repurposing and the potential of like urban mining and how that can contribute to a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Right.
Awesome. Thanks, Georine. Yarmo, go ahead.
Very briefly to Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. I only see your presentation. I see many of these incentive policies in all around the world, in Copenhagen, Finland, Paris, Rio de Janeiro, for developers, how to build things. But I'm really interested about using agents for actually managing how to use things, how to actually ongoing the dynamic development of cities. And I think there's, if I understand correctly, there's huge potential of actually enabling these incentives in everyday living, the managing leases or landlords or encouraging certain things. So my focus is not how to build things, but how to use things. And I think your approach is very relevant for really incentivize the usage policies rather than the building policies. I mean, they both are important. I'm not saying one or another, but I think I will push you in that direction if I can say something.
That's great. Thank you for the comment and for the suggestion. That's in the consideration as well. I think due to the limited resources in the PhD program, I'm currently focused on the building, but I'm 120% agree with you that it's not just developing while building, but also while using. And also while you live, like all the activities you have in your urban life. So yeah, I'm happy to talk more about this to see what opportunities we have. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll ask one more question and then we'll close. So this would be, I think, for both Leti and Vincy. I know you're working together on the ImmerScope tool. And I also know you've already started exploring that with sort of visitors and other folks who have been to the lab. We see those incredible videos that you're showing, and it's really impressive technology, but also it's a really interesting tool for design. So have you gotten any feedback so far from the people you've shared it with, or what has the response been like? Has it shifted the way you're thinking about it, or what's the response been like so far to the tool?
Vincy, do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, one is definitely like not not to let them focus too much on the detail about the image we generated. So I think have like parallel multi-generated image would be helpful. Yeah, so far I think that's the most impressed one.
Awesome. Anything to
Yeah,
add, Leticia?
having a much more multimodal tool for real. So now we have the images. So how can we have something that give us the sense of experiencing that place for real? So including sounds, including more like video-like situation. And also now we are like, let's say, playing with one user. So how can we make this collective for real? Which I think is one of the points of having these kind of tools like co-designing, like together with taking into account these more experiential and qualitative issues from the space. So those are the
Awesome.
points.
Awesome. We'll stay tuned, and for the City Science Network folks, you'll hear more about all of these research projects as people continue to work through them. We are at a close for today. Any closing thoughts for us, Kent? And then we will sign off.
No, I think these are really exciting projects, and I think they had the potential of having impact if they were taken to scale. All of them, what Letty is doing with safety and security and the informal settlements and thinking about all of those issues, the notion that we can have new alternatives to zoning to create incentives that can actually be a mechanism for change is really critical. What Ryan and Yasushi are working on, the new interfaces that are required to make that happen, like what Letty and Vincy are working on. I'm enthusiastic about all these projects, and I look forward to hearing from the network about how they might be applicable to, local conditions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good to see you all. We'll be in touch in the beginning of March, and we'll see you guys online in a few weeks now. So
Thanks,
nice
everyone.
to see you.
Bye.
Bye.